wanted to thank everyone for joining this meet and greet with our new Burlingame School District trustees, Doug Brown and Dan Devoy. Thank you to Doug and Dan. My name is Jen Faber, and I'm president-elect with Burlingame Community for Education Foundation. Tonight is sponsored by BCE. Our mission is to help Burlingame School District, or BSD, sustain and enhance an exceptional public education for all TK through 8th grade students. Working together with parents, the school district, and community, we provide BSD with financial resources to create a rich and inspiring education for our children beyond what is possible with public funds. This year's $2.5 million grant is funding 20 teaching positions and professional development. Tonight, we're here with our newest trustees who were appointed in March as interim trustees with Burlingame School District. They'll serve through December. As a brief note, we can't discuss anything tonight that will be coming before the school board. With that, I'll let Doug introduce himself.
Great. Well, thanks, Jen, and I appreciate everyone who's tuned in. I'll just do a real brief overview of my background. I know we have some good questions to get through as well. I'm a parent in the district. I have 2 kids at Lincoln Elementary, 2nd grader and a 5th grader. My wife and I have had fantastic experience in the district. We've had my daughter who's did TK, so she's now, I guess, on her 7th year of education at BSD, has had fantastic teachers each and every year, and it's been great. So my daughter will attend BIS next year. I'm also, I have served on the Measure M&O Bond Oversight Committee for the district. That's a group that provides accountability for the bond funds and bond measures and ensures that the funds are spent on what they're supposed to be spent on per the voters. So I've coached AYSO soccer over the years, been active in our school and community events. I'm a BCE supporter, of course, since the beginning, and we'll talk more about the great work that BCE does and how important it is to the budget at the school. So just in terms of my background, my wife and I moved to Burlingame from San Francisco 9 years ago. Pretty not a very interesting story, like many others here, I think. I've been in the Bay Area about 20 years. I grew up in Montana, went to school on the East Coast for college, lived in DC and Tokyo briefly before coming back to California about 20 years ago for business school, where I met my wife at Cal. Professionally, I'm a banker at Wells Fargo Securities. I work with education and nonprofit institutions, helping them access the capital markets to fund projects like dorms and academic buildings and libraries, mostly in the municipal bond space. Also advise on financial and strategic matters for some of that same client base. So Dan, I'll turn it to you.
All right. Good evening, everyone. I'm Dan. I have 1 child in the district in 1st grade at Washington, and 1 on the way. She's only in preschool, so we will be around for a while. But I am originally from the area. I'm from San Carlos, one of our neighboring towns here. My wife is from San Mateo, so we've been here forever. Also, briefly lived in San Francisco for work-related reasons, but like so many in this call, we moved to Burlingame for the schools, right? I almost feel that should be on the welcome sign on El Camino. Welcome, you came here for the schools. And we'll talk about the great schools tonight. But my background, I guess you could say I'm a teacher. I'm a law professor. So I have something in common with some of the struggles of teaching through the pandemic, but my students are usually in their 20s and 30s. So it's a little bit different, but I have experienced Zoom teaching, in-person teaching, mask on, mask off. So I'm familiar with that. Before I went into the law profession, as a professor, I was an attorney practicing mostly in real estate litigation. And then before that, I briefly, before I left to go work in academia, I had experience managing the law firm. So I have different experience levels too in managing people and corporations and whatnot to get things done. Like I said, I'm also a parent. I'm a pandemic parent. And what I mean by that is I've only known school or our school system or any school system when my daughter started Zoom kindergarten in the fall of 2020. That was, I share the challenges you all have. I can distinctly remember sitting through Zoom kindergarten and the challenges that had. And then even though I live near Washington, the after school program was at Hoover, which is dramatically the opposite side of the city, it turns out, from Washington. So I would have to drive her to Hoover, drive back, conduct my own work in Zoom classes in the afternoon, drive back to Hoover, pick her up, drive to San Mateo, get the other one out of preschool, come home, make dinner, all that fun stuff, do it all again the next day. So I know all the challenges that we've all had the last couple of years, but I also think when I look back on it, I think it'll be one of my prouder moments as a parent, going through that, because it was so challenging. And I got to see my daughter grow and see what goes on in a virtual classroom. So I think when it's all said and done, I'll look back on that, even with all the challenges and difficulties. It's a really great time. And I guess I'll stop it right there, because we're going to get more into our roles on the school board and what we hope to accomplish. So thank you.
Thanks, Dan. I think that my next question is for both of you, but you can go in order. What is the role of a school board, and what is the role that you serve as a trustee?
Sure, I'll jump in. So as a trustee, there's 5 members. We're elected generally, although Doug and I were appointed when 2 elected members had to move out of the area. But I think it's somewhat a misunderstood role. So we are responsible for the overall governance. We do not operate the day-to-day operations of the school system. We are not district employees. We're not paid in any fashion, only through kindness. But we hire the superintendent, and I think we have a really strong superintendent. And the superintendent then develops his staff and the principals as well. And day-to-day operations are done through that department, through the superintendent, the principals, and the teachers. So your trustees were responsible to all Burlingame residents, not just those who have kids in the district, although we mostly hear from those who have children in the district, but anyone is allowed to contact their trustee with an issue. And so we oversee the governance. As I said, we don't do things such as an issue with the teacher or things of that nature. We would direct you to kind of speak to your teacher, speak to your principal, then go up to the district office level. But we're always available. You can contact us through email. We generally have a policy where the board president responds for all trustees if you email all of us. But I do want to make clear that we do represent everyone in the district. And as I said, even though we weren't elected, for lack of a better term, everyone in Burlingame is our constituents, and we're responsible to those individuals for the governance of the school system.
Yeah, I'll just jump in with a couple of add-ons. So so the board meets monthly, and we, in addition to the number one, which is hiring the superintendent and evaluating the superintendent and his performance, we help set the vision and overall policy for the district. We approve the budget each year through a multi-step process. That's important, and we'll talk more about that later on in the call. We approve changes to the curriculum. I think we'll talk more about that as well. And we represent the district policies to the community. So we do want to hear from all of you. We're parents and community members, and we're here to listen. As Dan said, we're individuals, and we volunteer on the board, but we do want to hear where people are at on various issues. So I think that's part of our role is listening and just sort of gathering the opinions of the community. But in terms of the board work, it's entirely governance and policy versus management, as Dan said.
Yeah, and I think that's a really great point, just to add on that board members are a great contact for members of the community to let us know what people are thinking and what's going on. And while we can't say interfere with your child's homework assignment or something like that, we don't get involved at that level. If we do hear enough of something going on, we can go to district staff and say, well, what is going on with this issue? Can you fill us in a little bit more? In much the same way you're allowed to contact Jackie Spears' office or Gavin Newsom's office and any elected official and say, I have this issue. You're allowed to do that with your board of trustees as well.
And I would just add that one key difference there is that we do have day jobs. So
yes, very good. Yes, we're not 24/7. Very good.
Thanks both of you for that. So either one of you can go first. Maybe Doug, you can start, but how has your background, education and business experience prepared you for your role as a school board trustee, and what inspired you to, sort of apply for the position?
Yeah, sure. So like Dan said, for most of us, we moved here for the schools, and in particular for the public schools. My wife and I both attended public schools and felt like that's important for our kids. And I think that There's an equity component of that, which is that all kids have access to these great teachers and these great programs. And we recognize not everyone has the same privilege that we've had, or I have had, speaking for myself growing up, but being a part of this community that produces, great education for every child, I think was a part of it. Just personally, I've gotten to a point where I'm able to give, or ready, I should say, to give a little bit more back in terms of volunteer hours and engagement with the community. When the opportunity came up to serve as an interim trustee, I spent a lot of time learning about what that was and entailed, and speaking with board members and prior board members and others to understand really a lot of the things that we've just been talking about, which is, what does the board do? How can I contribute? I think my background in finance and business, I think, is helpful. If I were to pick one area where I probably can contribute the most, is probably around the budget and fiscal sustainability, which is important. I've mentioned to many folks that when I started paying attention to the school board was when I read Chris's, or paying, say, closer attention to the school board was when I read Chris's email, the superintendent's email, year and a half ago, that we were in fiscal trouble, and that we had budget deficits, and that big changes were going to have to be made to correct that. And of course, like many people, it didn't make sense to me. We have this generally wealthy community, or certainly expensive place to live. How could that be? So that was sort of the start of my more direct interest in the board, and I think some of my experience can help. I think that's largely been already dealt with, which is nice for Dan and I coming on here in March of 2022, and the masks are coming off. The budget is moving towards balance, and the teacher contracts are in place. So a lot of great work behind us, but keeping all that on track, I think, is important to me. And my experience as a parent and in the financial industry, I think, will be helpful to the board.
And then I would say for myself, it sounds kind of cheesy, but the draw of community service is very, very important to me. I believe very strongly in it. In that when you have the opportunity to serve and help out to do it, not everyone has the opportunity to do it. So that's fine. But for me, it all started, as I said, my oldest child, when she started Zoom kindergarten, and I wanted to be more involved. And I feel like I work very hard to understand the point of view of some of the parents that haven't got to know how great the school system is, simply because COVID has taken away so many interactive events that we just haven't got a chance to do. My oldest will be in second grade, which is halfway through elementary school. And we haven't, until hopefully this spring, got a chance to do a lot of things. So that kind of drew me into more of a service mode. I did serve in the military as well, so I've always kind of believed in public service. As background, I would say my legal background is probably very much on point for different issues that come across. A lot of the legal stuff is in behind the scenes, closed items that can't always be discussed publicly for legal reasons. But there's also people skills and negotiation skills, and getting different groups with similar interest or different interest together to pursue the same common goal. And that's kind of one of the things I believe in trying to do behind the scenes as well. I will say, just speaking for myself, it's been great learning what's going on in the district office. I believe Doug is completely correct that a lot of great foundation has been laid by previous board members and district staff. I think we have a really outstanding, hardworking district office. I'm really, really impressed, and I think we're very lucky to have them. And I don't have any motivation to say that other than that's what I've seen as a neutral observer, as a parent that just came onto this board. And I think we're really lucky in this district, and I want to be part of it and continuing to improve it and making it grow.
I agree that we're very lucky to have such a strong and hardworking district office. So thanks for saying that, Dan. And thanks to both of you for stepping into these huge volunteer roles. It's just like an enormous service to the community. So we're really appreciative. I guess sort of catapulting from that topic, what do you both see as the top challenges facing the school district currently? Maybe Doug, you can start.
Sure. So I think we've touched on two of them already that are on the top of my list, which is re-engaging the community is the immediate challenge. I think we're just now able to start after spring break, start having events back on campus on school grounds. There's this whole generation of parents and kids that haven't been to any of these fun school events. And, I know, each elementary school has its sort of signature events that I sort of take for granted, but, Dan and his peers, second grade parent peers have never attended them, or maybe never even set foot in the child's classroom. So I think one of the immediate challenges is to make sure we don't lose that really great community that we have with our neighborhood schools in Burlingame, and why so many people came here. Personally, I've met a lot of people that I know in Burlingame through the schools, through parents, through clubs and so forth. So I want to get that back. That's number one. And I mean, that's going to fall largely to the principals and teachers and volunteers. So I'm not saying that that's something the board necessarily can do, but I think it's important, and we can support those efforts. And then on the longer term view, it's for me, it's really a big one is the budget. So making sure that we can sustain the quality education that we have, and that means maintaining adequate reserves and not running through them we have reserves so we can have a bad year or two, but it's not sustainable to do that for very long. So having the sort of oversight and commitment to getting to as close to balanced budget as possible so that we can maintain the strength of the schools that we have. That's probably my number one issue, as I mentioned before. So I think we'll talk more about the budget specifics, and I'll save my other comments for that.
Yeah, and I would just add with re-engaging different communities, this will be the third class we've graduated from each school since the pandemic started. So that's all of BIS. That's, parents that are the most experienced at each school, unless they have a younger child, have all either moved on to middle school, high school, or beyond. So that is a real challenge that falls to the PTAs, BCE, the principals, the teachers. That's a huge, huge challenge. Because so many people have got accustomed to the social distance, the virtual distance, and now we need to re-engage face-to-face. So that's a challenge. I agree with the budget concerns as well, maintaining fiscal discipline. And then I just add something else we're also monitoring is how outside events impact our community. So as most people know, state laws mandated more housing is built in Burlingame. And we're monitoring that constantly to see how that's going to impact our school districts for different room for growth in different areas.
Thanks for that. So we could launch into the overview of the budget, but just a quick, brief, and fun question. Do you have any pets, a Burlingame student wants to know?
Yeah, I'll go first. We do. We have a 14 or 15-year-old mutt. We're not quite sure exactly how she is, but we know we've had her for 13 and a half years, and she was full grown when we got her. So she's kind of nearing the end, but it's just made us kind of appreciate her even more. We had a COVID hamster that had a very short and tragic existence, but not tragic, but just a short life. My daughter prepared a PowerPoint, my third grader at the time prepared a PowerPoint presentation of why we needed a second animal in the house. And then it turned out that hamsters seemed to be the easiest and not particularly long lived. So that's what we ended up with. But now we just have the dog.
Oh, that's a great answer. We also have a dog. He's a boxer. His name is Pablo, named after a former Giants player, Pablo Sandoval, because we're big sports fans. It was either that or Lincecum, and Lincecum just sounds weird for a dog. But we made the classic mistake with Pablo. We got him exactly 1 year before our oldest child was born. And so poor Pablo, it does not get the attention he used to as each kid has come along. And he already has a sad face as a boxer, but it gets a little sadder. He used to get special trips just to Tahoe or out to Pacifica for the beach. And I don't actually think he's left Burlingame in a long time now because all the attention goes to the kids. And so that's our story.
Thanks for that, both of you. So moving on, can we get kind of a high level overview of the Burlingame School District budget and sort of the mechanisms that provide funding? I don't know, Doug, if you want to start on that one.
Yeah, sure. I'd be happy to. So I guess first of all, the district is primarily funded through money from the state. The biggest revenue source is money from the state that's allocated based on the number of students we have and the number of days that they are in attendance at the school. So that's the biggest chunk of money. However, the state only guarantees an adequate public school education, as they term it. So that provides the basics, but we're lucky that we have much more than that, much more than an adequate public school education, because that money is supplemented. And one of the big ways, obviously, is through the BCE contribution each year. So as Jen said, that funds a lot of teacher salaries, lower class sizes, music, physical education, and many other things that at least a lot of us associate with good schools. So we're lucky to have that. In terms of how it breaks down, it's a relatively small district. We have about 3,300 students, 7 schools, of course. About 3/4 of that, 75%, comes from the state based on that average daily attendance calculation. And it's roughly 10,000 per student per year that the district gets from the state based on attendance. So that's the biggest chunk. BCE and the parcel tax, which comes courtesy of the voters, agreeing to pay a little extra to help the schools. Those two pieces together are about 10% of the budget. So you can see, and a lot of the budget is fixed. So if you lopped off the discretionary 10%, you could imagine, how meager education system that we would have if it were not meager is the wrong word, but how much we would have to get rid of in terms of those extras that we all take for granted as part of being in a good school. A lot of that stuff would go away if we didn't have that 10% of funding. So that's what comes with living in Burlingame. And that's great. The work of BCE and the taxpayers for approving the parcel taxes. So that's so 75% from the state, 10% from those additions. Another 10% comes from the state this year, which a lot of that has to do with COVID funding and money for reopening the schools. So some of that's not coming back, which is why we have a budget challenge again next year as that state money pulls back. And then about 5% from the federal government for Title I and other programs where the federal government contributes. So that's kind of the breakdown. And again, the biggest lever is just how many students we have and how many days they attend school. We have good attendance, which right now the state's holding us harmless. So we get to count all the kids as though they're there all the time, even when they're not. I think next year, likely that's going to go away, and we'll get a little bit of a haircut for anybody that's not any days that kids miss. But again, we have a high level of attendance, so that's good. So that's the revenue side, and then on the expense side, no surprise about 80% is for people, right? Because that's what we do. Teachers' salaries are about 45%. Staff salaries are about 10%. So that's the staff of the district that implement everything and manage this operation. 25% is benefits. So for both students and staff. So you add that together and you get to the 80%. The pensions and other benefits, again, about 1/4 of the budget. The contribution towards those benefits. And then everything else is that 20%. So books, supplies, paying the power bill, all that other stuff, which has to happen, of course, is the rest of it. So that's very high level, but just hopefully gives a sense of kind of where the money comes from and where it goes.
Yeah, and I would just add on a couple, because I don't want to repeat that great breakdown, just some misunderstandings I've noticed people have over the years. One, that $10,000 per pupil number sounds really high, but it's actually below the national average. National average is in the 12s, closer to 13,000. So we're actually compared to the rest of the country lower. And as Doug said, a lot of the sources of the state funding is property tax. And you think of Burlingame that we're going to have this great property tax revenue, but it doesn't work that way. Back in the 70s, it was all changed where everyone in California's property tax gets pooled into one big fund, redistributed out by the state. So it's not directly Burlingame property taxes that we see at the school level. And then when you have Prop 13 factor in to freeze property tax, it does create this discrepancy where the impression is I pay a lot in property tax. Why isn't this school getting the national average in funding? So there's challenges there. And then I would also add, Doug hit some great points with the expenditures. Just as we've all been hit with different inflation bills recently, the school system does too when it comes to the power bill, the water bill, things like that, costs continue to go up. So.
Just to piggyback on that, BCE was founded 40 years ago, basically in direct response to Prop 13. And it was basically founded by a group of parents who saw the writing on the wall and just were horrified by kind of what the implication of that was for public school funding. So I think we're really fortunate that those people got together and sort of started that. And this organization.
Yeah, it's really challenging as a parent, because as a homeowner, I think, yes, thank God. And then as someone who loves and cares about our school system, I think, ooh, that's probably not so good. So, yeah.
Well, and it's super challenging because, you look at your property tax bill and you're like, wait, you want me to do what? And you want me to contribute to what? And it is challenging, but I think the public schools really are why all of us moved to Burlingame. So I think we keep that in mind and it keeps us on the good path. So let's see, we were going to ask next, I was wondering how you work together with BCE, and I can speak a little bit to that, but both of you are pretty new into the process, but can you both speak to that a little bit?
Sure, I'll start. So Doug did a great job laying out the budget, and as you can see, there's certain things that exist simply because of BCE, whether it's a PE program, music program, additional funding for, I believe, up to 20 teachers, a teacher development program, language programs supplemented at BIS. That all comes from BCE, and without it, it's really, really a great source of funding for this district. And I think one thing I've learned living in this area my whole life between San Carlos, San Mateo, and Burlingame, really the reason Burlingame is the best one is because of the community involvement when it comes to the parents at the school level and programs such as BCE that allow us to do it. Without it, it's really what separates us from some of our neighboring schools. And so I'm very, very grateful of all the work BCE does. And, when I took my lawn sign down this weekend, only because I planted some new bushes, but it did feel somewhat sacrilegious. So I got to look for a new spot for it. So.
Yeah, so I, not much to add, but just in terms of how the money's allocated, I think, again, Dan and I have been on the board for a week. So Jen, you may have more detail, but there is a regular engagement meetings that BCE have board representatives or a board representative that attends. But really, I think, as a board, we're looking to deploy that money all for the same goal, right? And you all are raising it, which is the hard part. So if you are telling us that it's for teacher salaries and new, additional teachers in the elementary classrooms, whatever the purpose, I think we're happy to have it. And I think we have a lot of alignment in terms of priorities. So I don't know that the board needs to be overly involved in the purpose of the fundraising. I think you all have done a great job with that. And I can't actually speak to the day-to-day in terms of how that coordination works because I just haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of great transparency by BCE in your materials and in your website where you have very easy to understand pie charts that show where the money goes. And, I've been in your position as someone trying to raise money before, and it's tough. It is really tough to ask for donations. And so I think we always need to be cognizant of whatever the ask was promised to be for is where everything needs to go.
I think just to talk on that a little bit, like we work so closely with the Board of Trustees for Burlingame School District and with the superintendent to kind of align with what our donors also want. And I think that's really important, but I also really appreciate working closely with the school district so that we can, touch base regularly and make sure we're touching on topics that need to be kind of addressed. And I think that's really helpful. So I like that we have a regular dialogue. And thank you for saying that about our, pie charts, et cetera, because we worked very hard to provide very transparent information with respect to our funding model. So
it's really great because, there's a lot of asks nowadays, right? Especially the last couple of years. And it's sometimes hard to know where your money goes, even with really great reputable organizations. But this is all very local. It's literally in your backyard. in terms of your school district. So I think it's wonderful.
Thanks for that. So next question is to both of you. What are your unique skills or qualifications that make you a good candidate for the school board?
Oh, that's a challenging one. I'll start. So I guess I would go back to my legal background in terms of bringing people together to solve a problem. I know we don't always think of attorneys that way, that they try and solve problems, that we usually sometimes get a bad reputation. But trust me, behind the scenes, we're literally trying to solve problems. And I do wear a number of different hats, right? I am a teacher. I am a parent. I have been a business owner. I have worked with diverse groups of people in the military all across the globe. So I am well prepared to handle these, our board responsibilities. And I would say in the short time I've been here, I mentioned earlier, I was really impressed with the district office. I think the community's done a great job of electing board members. The other 3 board members are really committed and passionate and knowledgeable in different areas and have a tremendous care for this community. So I think you have a wonderful already elected board of trustees.
Yeah, I would second that last part for sure. It's a high bar to join. So I think we're, at least speaking for myself, obviously have a lot of work to do to get to a level that we can have an understanding and contribution that the existing board members have. But that said, I think, again, my financial background and business background, I think is valuable. I think just on a personal level, I think I have an open-minded and sort of reasonable, even-keeled approach to most issues. I think it's important that board members be focused on the mission of the district rather than a particular agenda or something, some passion project that they feel super important about. Not to say that's certainly many of those passions can fit within the district mission, but I think I generally come at things with kind of an open mind. As I read about these school districts around the country, it's like sometimes making me rethink the decision, but it's close to San Francisco and obviously much larger district, different dynamics, but the way that the board members treat each other and the community and put their own interests ahead of the kids. I mean, and then the culture war issues that you hear about some parts of the country, like I just have no interest in any of that. I think it's sort of a boring answer, but having competent, reasonable, thoughtful, open-minded decision makers on a district board like this, I think is really important. And I feel like I can lend that as well as my professional background and background as a parent, of course.
I think that's probably an enormous skill, is being even keeled. So I like that. So I'm going off script for a second, but I feel it necessary to ask. So are both of you going to put your names on the ballot in November? And you don't have to answer on screen, but I would feel sad if I didn't ask.
No, fair question. Yeah, I do intend to run for the permanent, the 4-year position.
That's great. Thanks.
And I have to check with my wife first, but otherwise, most likely. So yes.
Check with ground control. I like that. Well, thank you both so much for your time. Is there anything you want to say in closing that you want to let the community know?
Yeah, I'll just say, as we talked about earlier, Doug and I kind of came on after a lot of really challenging time has passed in terms unparalleled challenges for every school system in the United States. And the parents have done a great job. The teachers have done a fantastic job getting us to this point. BCE's done a great job. The PTAs have done a great job. Our principals, really learning about the tremendous amount of hours that our staff puts in that I was not aware of as a parent. It's really amazing, and it's heartwarming to see so many people passionate about educating the kids in this community. But we're entering now into the next phase. Ideally, COVID, can make up its own mind. But we do have to continue to push forward with different programs we've successfully done in making Burlingame, as we said earlier, the best school system around.
That's great. I second many of those comments, or all those comments. And I would just add that the superintendent as well, who came on at a time that probably had no idea what he was getting into. So the leadership, again, as someone who got interested in the board because of the financial issues, managing through that at the same time as COVID, and a good amount of turnover at the principals of the schools and so forth, has been phenomenal. The board has been great, and the staff and teachers, as I mentioned, my small sample of teachers, it's been 100% fantastic for my two kids. So, and I know that's not just random chance. So at any rate, I agree with Dan. I think I'm sure we'll have our challenges that will surprise us all, but I'm excited to be coming on to a well-functioning and very talented board at a time when a lot of challenging issues have been kind of moved beyond, or at least beginning to resolve. So that's exciting. I'm very excited to see what the future brings, and appreciate opportunity and BCE, as we've said a couple of times, that not only the support of the district, but supporting the board and giving us this opportunity to reach some people that maybe we haven't had the opportunity to meet. So thank you.
Thank you. Really looking forward to meeting everyone in the community. Thank you very much.
In person increasingly. Well, Doug Brown, Dan Devoy, thank you so much for your time and energy and your service to our community. We're forever grateful, and really just appreciate you taking the time tonight to briefly introduce yourselves to our community and have this chat with me. So thank you.